In the nightmare, you're being chased by something you can never quite make out. It's a tall, dark figure with too many hands, but no face. In the nightmare, you're running down a hallway that keeps getting longer as the monster gains on you. All those grasping hands. One of them reaches out, grabs the scruff of your neck with long, icy fingers, and you jolt upright in bed in a cold sweat, breathing hard, eyes darting around the room as it comes into focus, treating every shadow with terrible suspicion. There's this awful feeling in the air. It's heavy on you, like a weighted blanket, some terrible new atmosphere. This is more than just the nightmare come down. You know, in your pounding little heart, that there's something in the house. Something that means you and everyone you love some terrible harm, if it hasn't done that already. There are footsteps coming down the hall, slow and creaking. Why, tonight of all nights, did you choose to leave your bedroom door open? Your growing sense of anxiety at least subsides a little when you see a familiar silhouette in the doorway. The shape of your mother come to check on you. You must have been talking in your sleep. "Everything okay, sweetie?" she asks. But that is not your mother's voice. "Mom?" you ask back, small and trembling. She steps into the room, half bathed in the light of the moon shining in through your bedroom window. It's her, but something's wrong. She's wearing a strange mask, like something you'd see above the doors to an old-fashioned theater, cast in grinning porcelain. And her skin, it's a moribund shade of off-white, like a corpse just before it starts rotting. "Why so glum, honey?" The thing that you're sure is not your mother says. She walks toward you, and your whole body tenses up. You want to run, you want to scream, but it's like invisible hands are holding you still. The woman in the mask sits at the foot of your bed. "Where's Dad?" is all you can manage. That's when you notice the kitchen knife in her hand, stained with something that looks black in the moonlight. The thing in the mask laughs and asks if you want to go see him. You don't answer. In a week's time, when it becomes suspicious to friends and neighbors that nobody has left the house in all those days, the police will intrude. They'll find a home that's devoid of all life, and a particularly memorable corpse sitting at the dining room table. It's so rotten it looks almost like it's been burned, despite no other signs of fire in the house. And the pristine white mask still fixed to its face, a strand of black ichor dripping out of its frowning mouth. What you just encountered is a unique anomaly, even among the thousands contained by the SCP Foundation. They have it on file as SCP-035 The Possessive Mask. By now, you know that the Foundation wields unparalleled knowledge in the fields of everything from paranormal happenings, extra-dimensional entities, and the dark art of thaumaturgy. But even amongst that knowledge, the true nature of SCP-035 remains a frightening question mark. To the untrained eye, it looks like little more than a white porcelain comedy mask. Or was it a tragedy mask? According to the first set of researchers assigned to the 035 case, God rest their souls, the expression on the possessive mask's face has been known to change between the two, and when it does so, all photographic evidence depicting the mask will also change to match it. And this is one of the minor ways that the mask gets into your head and starts to influence your mind. One constant is that when viewed from the front, a foul-smelling black liquid seems to weep and drool from the eyes and mouth of the mask. This liquid, still unquantified by Foundation research, is highly toxic and corrosive to the touch, gradually breaking down any matter that it comes into contact with, organic or otherwise. Experimentation has yielded the fact that it affects glass the slowest of all, but even then, everything breaks down eventually. If ever you're unlucky enough to find yourself in the presence of the possessive mask, you may be able to look beyond all that. You'll find it charming, enticing even. If you pass within 6 feet of the mask, you'll even feel a strong desire to put it on, like its black tendrils are slithering in between the folds of your mind. like it's always been there, like its thoughts and yours are simply one and the same. And if you put on the mask, giving in to what it wants, that will soon be the case. The second the mask comes into contact with the face of a viable host, either a sentient being or an empty humanoid vessel like a mannequin or a corpse, it will produce a powerful alternate brainwave pattern. In a sentient being like you, this alternate pattern will nullify and erase your consciousness, resulting in immediate death. Think of it like a new landlord evicting an old tenant before moving in himself. When possessed by SCP-035, the mask's corroding effect becomes localized and accelerated on its host, slowly breaking down the body until it's completely inoperable, a lifeless, corroded husk. At this point, it will need to seek a new host. Concerningly for the Foundation, however, the mask can still operate its host after they've sustained a level of damage impossible to survive for any non-anomalous person. SCP-035 has been shown actively possessing hosts that looked like cadavers in an advanced state of decay, causing additional psychological distress to anyone witnessing. But don't make the mistake of thinking that 035, in possession of a host, is some mere mindless zombie. It might be the costliest mistake you ever make. The possessive mask is one of the most intelligent, articulate, and manipulative anomalies the SCP Foundation has ever contained, showing a highly magnetic and charismatic personality, capable of conversing at length with the researchers studying it. At times, according to some reports, it seemed as though the mask was the one studying them. It's prone to flattery, slowly warming up its targets, eroding their barriers, letting their guard down. During intelligence and aptitude tests, SCP-035 has consistently been superlative. It also displays remarkable emotional intuition, as well as a photographic memory. The mechanisms behind the nature of the possessive mask still elude its most dogged researchers, but in my own humble opinion, the question has a deceptively simple answer. The possessive mask is evil. Pure and undiluted evil in its rawest and most malevolent form. The entity is not hateful. In fact, I'd venture to say that it's full of love. And what it loves most is breaking the minds of human beings. Through mere conversations with the mask, the psyches of researchers have been irreparably shattered. It has driven victims to dangerous actions for themselves and others. Murder, torture, indiscriminate violence, all for no other reason than to satisfy its personal sense of sadism. The mask has boasted that it has a complete understanding of the human mind, and given enough time, it could destroy or reshape the mind of anyone simply by talking to them. It's an advanced form of neuro-linguistic programming that the Foundation's finest minds can't even come close to cracking. Researchers with multiple PhDs and years in the fields of anomalous research had been reduced to mindless slaves over the course of a single interview, something that the mask takes a perverse pleasure in. And if you believe that you would be the exception, that you could match wills with the porcelain monster and come out the victor, then you're exactly the kind of mark it seeks. People are often most vulnerable when they're confident. SCP-035 is one of the most dangerous and intelligent KETER Class anomalies that the Foundation have ever encountered, and thus, it requires an exceptional level of precaution and containment with multiple layers of defense. Most immediately, the anomalous mask is contained within a specially created unit composed out of 5 panels of hermetically sealed, 4-inch thick glass. Seeing as glass reacts the slowest to the mask's corrosive black excretions, it's the best compromise for keeping the horrible thing under lock and key, at least for certain intervals of time. The larger containment chamber is reinforced with iron, steel, and lead, and the doors to the chamber are to be triple locked at all times, with the only exception being when researchers are allowed into and out of the room. Outside, no fewer than 2 armed guards stand watch to halt any unauthorized entrances with potentially lethal force. These guards are not allowed to enter the containment chamber, for fear that they'll fall under the mask's thrall. An on-site psychologist performs regular checks on all of the staff members working with or even in proximity to SCP-035, checking for any potential signs of influence or mental instability. Due to the aforementioned corrosive effect of SCP-035 excretions, the smaller glass containment unit needs to be replaced every 2 weeks, with the previous containment unit being disposed of via SCP-101, a living leather satchel with an extra-dimensional interior. Anyone who comes into contact with the mask while it's possessing a host is required to undergo immediate psychological evaluation from a trained professional. For many anomalies, establishing rigorous containment procedures would be the ultimate solution. But nothing is ever simple with the possessive mask. You see, it was first discovered in the early 1800s in the city of Venice. City authorities were breaking into an abandoned house, a stately manor on the outskirts, the occupants of which hadn't been seen in years. Inside the manor, they found a sealed tomb, and inside that sealed tomb, covered in written pleas to never free its contents, they found what would one day be known as SCP-035. The owner was long gone. To the city authorities of 1800s Venice, he seemed like a madman, his home full of countless notebooks, all littered with deranged scrawlings. He seemed to be obsessed with a place known as Alagata, though they had records of no such place. The mask's whereabouts became unknown for a time after that, though everywhere it went, death and destruction seemed to follow. The Foundation has an entire separate team dedicated to connecting historical murders and disappearances that may have involved the mask, in hopes of tracking its entire sordid tale. But after being interred at a Foundation containment site, the mask started a new reign of terror within the Foundation's very walls. A month after it was first contained, violence broke out in the facility. Right under the Foundation's nose, the mask had been manipulating the personnel on the research team, recruiting them to its sinister and mysterious cause. They started murdering their own comrades to create a distraction, while others attempted to smuggle 035 and its glass containment unit out of the site. Luckily, site security cottoned on before the plan could succeed in its ultimate objective. They intercepted and terminated the mutineers who had been manipulated by the mask's anomalous influence and returned it back to its chamber. All the survivors involved in the incident were transferred off-site for extensive psychological counseling. But this was just the beginning. The incident made the Foundation conduct further research into the anomaly's means of manipulation and discovered that SCP-035 was capable of telepathy, even when not attached to a host. This both accounted for its ability to influence people to put on the mask, as well as how it so thoroughly corrupted and controlled the former staff members who performed the insurrection on its behalf. This discovery resulted in the Foundation exercising further caution around which subjects were permitted to interact with SCP-035. Despite how intelligent and superficially charming it seemed at any point, there was no doubt they were dealing with a sadistic puppet master. All this was bad enough, but the Foundation grew substantially more concerned when it started taking interest in more ambitious potential hosts. SCP-682, the hard-to-kill reptile, and SCP-4715, a demon born of war. Both are immensely violent and powerful anomalies with regenerative capabilities, and that's exactly why the Foundation believes 035 is taking such an interest. Either might be passively regenerative enough to counteract the corrosive effect that the possessive mask has on its hosts, potentially giving it a permanent, not to mention extremely dangerous, body. Extra measures were put in place in hopes of ensuring that such an outcome never transpired, but the mask just seemed to take that as a challenge. There were a string of other escape attempts in the months that followed, all accompanied by a number of Foundation casualties. Site Command reviewed the incident logs, including all the gory details, and correctly concluded that the possessive mask was too dangerous an anomaly to be given any leeway whatsoever. They demanded that it be permanently sealed in its containment chamber and all of its host privileges revoked. It was this move that revealed just how many loyalists the mask had created in the site. There were large internal protests at the news that its steady supply of mannequin and corpse hosts were being revoked, with some of these 035 devotees taking their violent aggression out on their fellow staff members. This resulted in several murders and several more terminations of compromised personnel. Site Command dictated from that point on that staff on the 035 case be profiled and rotated frequently, with any direct or proximity contact with 035 kept to a minimum. But once again, this well-intentioned move didn't stymie the mask's effort. They just encouraged it to up its game. Soon, staff members who weren't even working with the mask, but just so happened to be working within 10 meters of its containment cell, started to bear the brunt of its secondary anomalous effects. They reported hearing unintelligible whispers, as well as a pervasive sense of unease. Some even reported the onset of severe migraines that were disrupting their ability to work. No apparent superficial changes were detected in the mask while all of this unfolded. Some of the researchers working with 035 suggested reinstating the mask's host privileges in hopes of appeasing it, but this motion was denied. Site Command refused to give in to what they saw as the mask's cruel and petty intimidation tactics. What followed was the mother of all dirty protests and would mark a substantial escalation in the mask's campaign of psychological terror. The walls themselves in 035's cell started to secrete copious amounts of black fluid, analysis of which revealed that it was composed mostly of human blood, with a number of other alien toxins and contaminants. The substance, much like the one that leaks from the front of the mask's eyes and mouth, was highly corrosive and began eating through the structural integrity of the walls. But this wasn't just random. Foundation personnel quickly noted that the corrosive sludge was forming clear shapes on the walls, full sentences in a number of different languages, including Greek, Italian, Latin, and Sanskrit, which a research team were put in charge of translating. In addition to the sentences, there were also complex diagrams depicting acts of ritual sacrifice, all involving members of staff working at that very site. During this time, the mask's powers of corrosion also seemed to increase, destroying its glass containment unit and warranting replacement at increasing speeds. On some occasions, the glass would simply shatter, leading to a sudden spike in the severity of the anomaly's effects. There were 6 casualties and 3 deaths during the cleanup efforts. In this war of attrition, it was clear that the Foundation was losing, so Site Command began resorting to anomalous countermeasures. This included lining the walls of 035's cell with SCP-035, an anomalous alloy known as telekill, for its ability to dampen telepathic abilities. Getting any other anomaly to interact with the possessive mask could have unpredictable and potentially dangerous results, but with researchers and guards dropping like flies, they were running out of options. In a rare win for Site Command, the telekill did its job, reducing the amount of deaths for people working in proximity to the outside of the possessive mask's containment cell. However, every action has an equal and opposite reaction, and the measures to prevent the mask's power from proliferating had the unintended result of concentrating its anomalous effects with far greater potency in the containment chamber itself. Researchers working on the case referred to it as a kind of anomalous greenhouse effect. In practical terms, this made the containment cell an incredibly dangerous place to be for human beings. Subjects inside the room reported the sounds of unintelligible yet deafening voices, a general sense of dread, and a gamut of negative emotions, from depression to fear to outright rage. Spending 3 hours in the cell had even more severe effects: bleeding from the eyes and mouth, destructive tendencies, hostility to others, and the constant ringing of cruel laughter in their ears. At this point, the afflicted person was likely to slip into a state of irretrievable psychosis, the inherent mechanisms of their minds warped by the dark power of the mask. The team instructed to decode the writing that appeared on the wall were also found dead, having suffered violent demises. SCP-035 clearly had no intention of letting up. Cleanup efforts on the leaking walls also hit a diabolical roadblock. The black liquid oozing out of the walls was becoming increasingly acidic, eating through the iron, the lead, and even the telekill. Soon enough, the cell itself would cease to have any structural integrity. If left unattended, the possessive mask would have telepathic free reign over the entire facility. In the absence of some way to reinforce the walls, they would have to be replaced entirely every 2 months. Once again, researchers suggested reinstating the host privileges for 035, a motion that Site Command once again denied. A disturbing pattern was becoming clear. Perhaps the researchers affected didn't even know it, but the mask was using them as a mouthpiece. They were all just pawns in a game of incentives, the mask bargaining and threatening until it got its way, and the Site Commanders refused to give in to its little game. SCP-035 would not reward their bravery. Soon enough, the entire cell was saturated in the dark liquid from floor to ceiling. Personnel needed to enter the room decked out in full reinforced hazmat suits if they wanted to survive even a small excursion. It had terraformed the cell into its own little slice of perdition, a horrifying concentration of dark power where the sadistic whims of the possessive mask reigned supreme, and its methods were about to get even more dangerous and extreme. Incidents with 035 became an almost daily occurrence as it exercised its power over the cell. There were incidents where it telekinetically locked the door, trapping researchers or cleaning personnel inside to be its psychic playthings. Appendages started forming out of the corrosive fluid puddles, reaching out and trying to claim the people trapped in the room. At this point, electronic devices stopped working inside the room, including light sources, meaning that the only way to navigate the darkened room was by gas lamp or candlelight. Any attempts to clean the excretions have become completely fruitless as the room degrades further and further, leaving the site commanders to ponder their next moves. In all likelihood, they would need to remove 035 from its current cell and transport it elsewhere. And who knows what nasty little tricks it would have up its sleeve for then. The mysteries and cruelties of the possessive mask aren't likely to stop fascinating and frightening the SCP Foundation and the rest of us anytime soon. Behind the alternating grin and frown of its porcelain face, it's concocting plans that you or I could scarcely even comprehend. It is old, it is patient, and above all, it is monstrous. And the effect it has on everyone around it is a frightening reminder that the power dynamics here might not be in favor of the Foundation this time. In other words, it's not trapped in here with us. We're trapped in here with it. Check out the DrBob Patreon and become a junior researcher today. Now go and watch another entry from the files of DrBob, like SCP-189, Hair Imitating Parasite.